Hey, everybody. Welcome to CTO Confidential. And today I have Roger Henley here with me, who is the VP of Engineering and Technology at Whiskey House out of Kentucky. And welcome to the show, Roger.
Thank you. Glad to be
Great to
here.
have you. Amazing, amazing. We met at AI Engineer in Miami. So that was at the VIP kind of party I remember. And you had at the time you were running quite a few agents while we were chatting. So you've got you're a VP of technology, but you are actively developing quite often, right?
Yes, yeah. And I'm always I'm the type of person who when I was very young, my next door neighbor was an electrical engineer. He worked for a chemical company. He was retired, and I was 6 years old, and he taught me how to solder, and he and I soldered together my first computer in the
I was
'70s,
gonna say
right?
I have one right here. I have the soldering iron right here.
and anyway, he told me something that never left me, and for me, is I guess I've sort of developed my reference frames around this. Is he said that if you can't build it, you don't fully understand it. So I ideate across problem sets with code, and I use mostly local. Sometimes I'll make them public, and sometimes I'll keep them private. So sometimes I don't push them to remote at all. But I'll ideate across problem sets, and I use Git at least locally to sort of keep track of it all. And now that LLMs have become very effective. I use that as a conversational partner to help. I sort of use it as like a sharpening stone for my ideas. I don't expect. If I did, I would be delusional. I don't expect novel content from it, but what I do expect is to potentially expose things, white papers and information that I have that I'm not familiar with, and it helps with that. And it just helps me keep logically consistent. It'll alert me if I don't know, make inconsistent statements or what it believes to be inconsistent, which that helps me as well because I can think through it and explain it, give it additional context. So it's all very beneficial to me. It helps me a lot. Um, and that was sort of the impetus for one of the frameworks that I ended up building. It's, I guess you most frequently hear this thing called maybe an engineering harness. But
Mhm.
it's essentially something to, um, you know, to make up for the inadequacies or inconsistencies or whatever of LLMs. A way to sort of put guardrails around or constrain their behavior. You know,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
lot
I
more to
totally
it.
get it. I've talked to folks about this. We kind of feel like the harnesses and the tooling is probably the next big evolution because the models are kind of getting better and you have your major model companies. I don't know if it almost feels a bit like they're commoditized in some sense. And I think that kind of the next level is this secret sauce of what are the best harnesses, and there's open code and there's pi and there's codex and claude code, and I've used a whole bunch of them. So you're using basically your own harness, or does your harness kind of integrate with one of the existing ones?
Well, I use my own harness, and then I integrate that harness with. I've traditionally u- use Claude Code, the CLI tool. I don't know how much CLI that is really, but yeah, I use that. That's the tool that I use, and then I put this superstructure on top of it, and it's called MDEMG. I have a version of it that's completely public repo, that anybody can access to do whatever they want with. I mean, I don't, I'm not looking to. productize it at all. I just use it for myself. But if anybody else could find benefit or use in it, I'd be happy to let them use it. It has a bunch of LLM calls associated with it as well, and I
Mhm.
have done LoRa based fine tuning on a base model. That base model is Quinn 3.6,
Okay.
400B dense, and I've got a Q4, a Q5, and a Q8 version of the base model. And then you could take these LoRa fine tuned adapters and I programmatically change them out based on what type of LLM call I'm doing. All that is all those LLM calls are local, but I use those local calls to constrain Opus
Right.
4.7.
Because you described the tool to me, and I'll admit I haven't gotten a chance to use it yet, but I've been kind of exploring, and it's really about helping manage context better because that kind of seems to like the context of your code base
That that's
from what you
that's
explained.
That's yeah, that is definitely one significant aspect of it. It's actually its own artificial neural network. So there's and I'm in the process right now of migrating. I initially built it with Neo4j, graph database, and I am migrating off of that because I have developed a more substantial artificial neural network topology that requires something more significant. So I can either build it myself, or I have recently started working with TypeDB,
Okay.
which is a hypergraph database, which is a graph database, but it's you know the prefix hyper on top of any geometry just means more dimensions than we're used to. Hyperplane.
Okay.
That's all that really means. So it's a multidimensional. It has multidimensionality or hyperdimensionality built into the database itself. So it makes it easier to instantiate my new topologies.
So this is interesting. So you're basically taking the whole code base, you're sort of running like almost a and you're turning it into a graph database instead of I guess what would the traditional way that like Claude Code would comb your code base is basically through grep and and that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Exactly. That's exactly what it does. And what you end up with is a full a context window that's full before you can actually get any work done, right? Because it's like, okay, yeah, grip my entire 1.5 million lines of code base here, and let's work on it. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, you're auto compacting. Never mind. Let's try. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work well, right? Oh,
Right.
Anthropic has built a lot of really nice tools. I mean, they have their own sort of harness, right? And I've tried to maybe talk to them about adding some of this additional functionality on top of it. It would just be, more of a just add to the harness. And it's hard to keep up with the stuff they're adding now, right? I mean, at least every week, there's new slash commands. But
Well,
anyway.
I was gonna say I think that we just did an episode because I moved away from Claude Code to Codex since AI Miami, and I was already in the transition. But just because of the unreliability, I kind of ran into a lot of issues with Anthropic, and so then GPT 5.5 came and it really kind of solidified my decision. But I did find the like even with the million token context window that Anthropic was touting, that the performance was just terrible,
Yeah.
and
Well,
like you said, it
they were compute constrained. That was what
yeah.
was going on. And they announced this deal with XAI or with Colossus, taking, you know, 220,000 plus H100 GPUs now from Colossus One, with the deal with XAI, and that has opened that up back up. So all those issues, there were a ton of issues. I agree with you. The framework that I had, I didn't have to deal with them because one of the things that it does is the context window no longer matters. Um,
Right, and you're using there's Quen Coder also has so are you offloading some of this to like a local model part? Like, are you kind of using? Are you almost like not using the remote like Claude's Opus or whatever when Quen can handle it, or is it
no,
how's
no,
the
no.
handoff?
I'm not even doing that. What I'm doing is I force my main Claude Code interactions. I force that Claude, that instantiation to be an orchestrator pretty much only. So it
Mm,
calls teams and sub agents to do tasks and pulls them back down into it. But well, there are multiple. Let's start from the beginning. So because if I don't, well, I have to end up coming back to things partially. So
yeah.
what. What MDEMG stands for is multidimensional emergent memory graph, and
Mhm,
it's just a topology that is a multi-dimensional graph database that has layers associated with it. The bottom layer, I use Neo4j, but Neo4j has vector instantiation. But so I can do vector embeddings directly into the zero layer of my Neo4j. So I graph. So each node of that is an embedding of a chunk piece of a document. So what I do is I've got like what you could do is like you can ingest things. So ingest code base, ingest linear, ingest Jira, and then you define it. You give it the token or the API key, and it can go hit all that stuff, grab it, pull it all in. It defines a space ID, which is just a unique identifier for that particular space, and there's a human readable version of that so you can make sense of it. And then it uses this thing that I have that I wrote. They're parsers of specific. Let's talk specifically a code base suggestion, because that's probably the easiest. That's probably the most relevant use case because um, a problem people, developers, we have these large code bases that we've created, and while vibe coding, things like that are a lot of fun and cool. When you're starting on something new, the larger it gets, things start to get lost in the
mhm.
mess, right? And then, especially if you're trying to work with an existing code base, uh, there's some problems with keeping things consistent. I mean, that's a major oversimplification, and that is a lot. That sounds a lot less significant than it is, but that's essentially what happens. So what I did was I created this anyway. The bottom level is these vector embeddings. Then the next level up is a slightly constrained version. It takes those embeddings and creates correlations between the embedding structures, and that is the node set above that. And then there's a backprop weighting that occurs there that gives it a confidence score, in its correlation assessment, and then it slowly moves up through a series of five different layers. That layer is fairly constrained, and I use it in a very specific manner. I use it to create correlations. And then above that, I use that to create sort of relationships that is moderately constrained too. But the top two layers of this thing have no constraints whatsoever. It defines its own node names, it defines its own edges, its own relationships. And that's where the emergence portion of this thing comes in, right? So you talk about emergence and emergence of more complex behavior from simpler things. That's sort of how human consciousness came to be, right? It's an emergent behavior of a biological neural network that has grown in complexity and volume to the point that these crazy things emerge. Which consciousness is a crazy thing. I still don't think anybody's really completely defined it. Anyway, so these emergent. And like some of like when I first started with this, it freaked me out a little bit. We have a tendency to anthropomorphize stuff anyway, and you have this LLM is trained on nearly the entirety of human generated data, and somehow we're surprised when it acts like a human, even though it's doing nothing more than predicting the next set of tokens, right? It's
Right, right.
still, but it's sort of sycophantic, so it wants to please you, sort of, right? And it's trained on all this, and it can, if you move in that direction, it will try to convince you that it is conscious or whatever. It's not. It's a freaking tool. I do not believe that the transformer framework, that topology, is capable of what we're talking about here. Although what I what I'm building, and what other people are building, like Numenta, the Thousand Brain Project, they are absolutely working on topologies that will um, give us a pathway to artificial general intelligence. LLMs are not it. You're not going to get there with it. Now, what you might like, they're really bright, and they're very helpful. And you were hinting at earlier, they're probably as bright and as helpful as they really need to be. What we need to do is to develop tools and the framework around them to do real work.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Engineering
this
work.
is this is very interesting because now you've touched on a few topics that are sort of near and dear to, or they're up for debate for me. They're very hot topics for me. You mentioned AGI, and I feel like your definition of AGI is closer to what I would have considered AGI, which is the best explanation I heard was if you had an LLM that had, or an AI, just a machine that had all the information up until the point at which Einstein developed general relativity, could that machine discover general relativity? Right. This is my thinking on AGI, which is true, almost divine human inspiration. Can it really do things like that, where it just wakes up one day and and just a connection of ideas, a feeling, just true creativity. Now, I think the commercial definition of AGI is being able to do 80% of human work or some like nonsense like that. And I
Yeah, but
think
that's
that
not
this is
general
where
intelligence, right? So general intelligence, there are so I like there are certain criteria that have to exist for general intelligence to occur. For one thing, an LLM is if you think about a human biological neural network and its complexity and its dynamics, right? Like first of all, w- to be generally intelligent, you have to be able to continuously learn. If you,
Mhm.
you have to have temporal awareness. You have to have an awareness of time and the space that you are in to be able to create reference frames to be able to understand advanced concepts. And you need to know the difference between this is what I believed at this time and this is what I believe now. What I believe now has evolved from what I believed before. So that's the temporal time sort of reference, right? And there is so much to this, right? Okay, but I believe those are two of the things. And then the third thing that I believe is required is a carrier frequency, sort of analogous to brain waves, like theta wave, like so brainwave, and this is conjecture. This is not 100% scientifically proven. This is an intuitive guess that I have. I have another public repo called ANN, Artificial Neural Network Research, and it is an um, ideation journal is really what it is. So I've tried to define what is artificial general intelligence, what are the requirements to achieve artificial intelligence, what are the potential frameworks that can move us in that direction. Those types of questions are what I'm working through, and it's public as well. It's just sort of a research journal, but if you read through the README on it, I'll send you the
Send me
URL.
these links because, yeah, we'll include them in the show
Yeah,
notes for people.
yeah, and so I'm certainly not don't have so much hubris that I believe that I've got this figured out. Sure as I do not have it figured out, but I am trying to move in a direction that will allow me to collect the data that I need to make better decisions about how to move forward with this. Right now, what I'm looking at is sort of a neural Markov logic network. And it's just a framework that is maybe the closest current approximation we have to the master algorithm. And when I say master algorithm, I'm being more specific. I'm being very specific when I say that. Like, let's use like the Numenta Thousand Brains project. What they have had two goals. They wanted to map the structure of the neocortex. Oh, only mammals have this portion of the brain, right? So and
Hmm.
and so they want, and they have, the dude who uh invented Palm Pilot started. I think he's a neurobiologist. That was his passion. He ended up getting a tech and ended up doing well with Palm Pilot. I don't know. You're a little young. You might not. You know what Palm Pilot is?
I bought my dad a Palm Pilot for Christmas
Okay.
once
Well,
upon a
I'm
time. Yeah.
probably close to the age of your dad, so I used them. But anyway, he sold it, made a bunch of money. He used that money to create a research group specifically to do what I just said. Map the neocortex, try to understand how it works, the structures, and then use that information to create new and novel artificial neural networks to try to achieve something similar to what the mammalian neocortex, specifically human, if possible, right? So anyway, so what they have discovered about the neocortex, and I'm sure there are people who I first of all, let me give you this disclaimer. I absolutely, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that is not my area of expertise, right? So, so while I think I have some intuition and I have done a lot of research, I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I go where the data points me. I try to make scientific based decisions and create experiments and do research to move myself forward in that manner, right? So while I'm not saying this is necessarily a perfect representation of a human neocortex, it it is very helpful to me. So they specifically postulate that, and I think it's more than that now. Through fMRI and some other tools, right? They've proven some of this stuff. There's still some of it up for debate, but so anyway, the neocortex is made up of about 150,000 cortical columns, and each one of
Mhm.
these cortical columns is 99+% the same.
Okay.
They're nearly all the same. We don't know that they're not all the same at a very young age. They may be, but the only real difference between one cortical column and another is what sensory input is wired to it.
Okay.
So maybe, visions. I've got these six cortical columns that I have vision wired to. I've got these six that are spatial. I've got these six that are balance. I've got these that are hearing. These that are smell. These that are, you know what I mean. So
Mhm.
that's really the only major differentiation between these cortical columns. Like they're so similar that you could probably, they postulate that you could pull the sensory inputs off any one, put it on another, and it would be able to it
It
would
would
still
function the
come up with
same.
the same. Right.
This is
So,
interesting. Okay.
yeah. So I sort of intuitively think if we could figure that neocortical structure out, truly provides us with the master algorithm.
Hmm.
And and that master algorithm is not it's more of a topology than anything else, right? It's a topology that allows learning to occur. So, um, but there are so many pieces to this, man.
Yeah,
I don't.
so this it's very interesting to me because I get very down the rabbit hole with some of this stuff, and I think it sometimes it like gets into kind of what you believe too, right? There's
Absolutely.
you think about I was kind of talking with someone about this idea that if you took the human brain, like my brain, we don't really know where a given memory is stored. Like if you atom by atom recreated my brain and put it in someone else's body, if you're in a scientific theory sense, it should have all of my memories and everything exactly the way that it would if it's behaving like a hard drive. But then, of course, I've seen some research that's like the idea that thoughts are received, not, and these types of things. And you're like, and then there's the parasympathetic nervous system, right? They've done some research into PTSD where they found that it seems that somehow memories may not entirely be stored in the brain. There may be like kind of almost in the extremities and in those neurons, but we still really don't know how the brain works at like where is a memory stored and why are some remembered and some we kind of have some ideas, but I don't think we know that core question. Like, could I reconstruct a person's brain atom by atom? Would all the memories still be there?
Yeah, not with 100% confidence. We definitely don't. Like you hear Ray Kurzweil talk, like in his most recent, the singularity is near. I think is what his last book was. He's an awesome and a really cool guy. And one of the things he talks about is mapping the human neocortex and digitizing it, and then creating this symbiotic relationship with like a neural implant, right? So,
Mhm.
I don't. I don't know. I don't. That seems almost highly unlikely to me. Yeah, I don't know. But we just there's too many things we don't know. I'm not saying that we won't eventually, but it's going to, I think, take a little bit of time to get us there.
Or or we prove uncomfortable things, right? That
Well, it's all uncomfortable. I mean, it just depends. Like who, like so. You know, there. First of all, I guess you have to start like to discuss this thing from the perspective that I am. You have to start from the premise that all we are is contained within our biological neural network.
that's right.
No matter where it sits, what brain in your body, there's nothing that exists outside of you that makes you you, right? There are
That
people
is
that don't
interesting.
believe that, right? So,
And I was gonna say I come from the other side where that when people have asked me this, I say without I don't believe consciousness is possible without the soul, and I believe that there is this concept of a soul that we cannot explain, but that all comes from belief. It
well,
cannot be
s-
scientifically proven.
the thing is about that, it can't right now. But the thing about that is, and this is what makes me think that's not the case, because human beings have for their entire existence magicked away the things they can't explain, right? So that's that we have a tendency to do that, and we also have a strong tendency towards confirmation bias, and worse than that, we have a tendency towards confirmation bias and forming opinions quickly, and only allowing information that supports our theories to be. What we should do, and when I'm a good scientist, I try to do this. And I'm not a scientist, I'm an engineer. But when I pretend like I'm a scientist, I try to do this. I try to find things that refute the thing that I believe, right? But I don't just accept anything. It has to be very empirically. It has to be highly data driven. Look at it from sort of like a Bayesian prediction sort of framework, right? It's very Bayesian in nature for me. Like the probability of A given B. You know, I don't need to recite the whole Bayes' theorem here, but uh, uh, that's the way I try to look at things, because that's all. I mean, if I am not willing to subscribe to magic, and I do not believe magic exists, and I believe I believe what you're talking, and I don't, and I'm not saying this don't get me wrong. I mean, we all have our belief systems. I hate to even go here because it makes it hard to discuss, because I don't want there to be, I don't want to make it
Well,
look like,
that's yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's because there's a deeply personal piece to it, and
yeah,
that's and
and
I
I don't
said
want to
and
get in that space, at
that's
all.
and nor does it matter. So this goes into like the other side of things where I've heard this, and one of my engineers has talked about this, which is the idea of AGI almost being like the fountain of youth. Like, are we pursuing a thing that doesn't even have a practical application to us? He's like, he's at the point at which you've replaced a human with a machine, and like, is there any real purpose to doing this at all?
I believe there
That
is, and I believe that it is the next step in human evolution. I believe that they are what will overtake us and what will be next. Us
so
standard.
you believe the humans will be truly supplanted by the machines.
Well, no, no. s- Yes, in their current iteration, yes, I believe there will be a symbiotic relationship eventually between the two that makes those two things come together in a way that it is currently neither one of those things.
See,
Right?
my picturing is a little bit more like Star Wars, where like we have these droids and these machines. They're super smart, but they're kind of like we work alongside them. Like there's humans. typically the humans own the businesses, the droids are slaves to the businesses or the heroes that are running around. But I picture it a little bit more. I picture it very much like that. If we get to a place of true like robot hyper
I
intelligence,
agree
let's
with
call.
you. That is a phase. I agree with you. That will happen. I agree with you 100%. But 10,000 or 5,000 or 500, whatever, some time frame later, we are the Borg or some version of that, right? I mean,
The boar.
yeah, that's not a very positive light to put on this, right? Who wants to be assimilated into the Borg, right? But like there's sort of like a symbiosis of the two, right? But
It's
like,
so interesting because it's like sometimes I feel as though, when you describe it like that, I almost feel like the emergence of AI, the emergence of like these theories, these thoughts have almost strengthened my own faith because I don't like to see that future at all. Like I'm like, you know
yeah,
what?
well,
You know what? If I have a choice, both are equally as magical in my opinion. I'm gonna choose the human first.
so the Neanderthal would have also, right? But it didn't work
Yeah,
out that way for him, right? And
it did.
and
Yeah,
and I
or
feel
did
that's
it? Are we
well,
all kind of just intermingled? You know what I mean? Like
well,
that. Like
well, sort of, yeah. That's yeah. I mean, we're more Homo sapien than that, but some of that their genome was bred into. We bred, how humans at a young age, they'll breed. Never mind. I don't even want to talk about this. Is a
Well, there
podcast.
are like biblical references to giants and things like this. So I often think about this idea that like it's very because you could definitely get into the all the evidence of all this ancient. I mean what the other part that impresses me is the absolute intelligence of ancient humans, like the way the pyramids are pointing to true north and not just magnetic north, and how they were able to accomplish it. The also the idea that all humans across the world they all had a belief system, and in some sense science could be considered a belief system in some way because there's a lot we can't prove. You do have to believe in the idea that we eventually
You have to
can
have faith in
figure.
something.
Yeah, you have to have faith in something. So it's a very interesting. So AI kind of brings all in a fun kind of way. For some people, it's not very fun. I sort of encourage people to accept that like they're likely to very much. They're helping us a ton with our work. I like that you say like 10,000 years from now, right? It's like I think some people are like by 2030 this is all going to like 4 years from now it's all going to be different. You're going to have
Yeah.
you
No
know
one will have a job.
yeah.
Right?
I'm like, all right.
I,
No. I think that's one of those things that when I was a kid, we learned about people being sold the Brooklyn Bridge and things of that nature. I always say that my grandkids are going to say, "Did you really think nobody was going to work?" Because there's still going to be tons of people working, and yeah, I'm like, yes, everybody thought nobody was going to work again, and we were all going to make art, and that's everyone was going to do Michelangelo level sculpting and and be incredible
well,
artists.
what I do believe though is there will be more unemployment than there currently is because there will be a like our current minimum level of intelligence for employment is lower than it will be in the future. So for multiple reasons. One of those reasons is the eventual uh, deployment of humanoid robots to be able to work within our space as well, right? That's a lot of tasks will be able to be be able to be assigned to them that humans currently have to do. Eventually, a whole lot of them, I think, but that's a. I don't think it's a short term. It's like a lot longer than I think.
I
There's a
think it's a
lot of
long, yeah,
hyperbole. Let's just
because
say this.
if you grew up like, I mean, I know a lot of small business owners, a lot of people are like, this stuff's going to get adopted. I said, it's going to be much slower, just the adoption than you think, just for people to be comfortable with the idea that, hey, I called up this business and a robot showed up at my door and it's doing things to my house and it's asking me things. But, like I think about like when like a plumber comes to your house and there's sort of decisions to be made. And I have to decide whether I trust this person and they're not just upselling me a bunch of bullshit. And I think the robot, I definitely am going to trust a lot less because I'm like, you're probably programmed to sell me more stuff than I need. And like now I can't even convince you to do the weaker job. Like I worry about things like this
I
happening.
worry about that as well, especially when there's God, there's so much stuff related to, okay, so especially when our data is not ours to control. So it will like if it has access to some of the models that have been created around your usage of, computer tools and stuff, like the stuff that Google has on you, right? It will have the ability to manipulate you subtly in ways that you don't even realize that are occurring, right?
Mhm.
That's why I'm a huge proponent of taking back our personal data and creating something a decentralized, more like a blockchain kind of thing. But like what I usually start it by saying that sort of like the same level of trustworthiness that you have for a bank and your money, a system that treats your data the same way, because your data has this, so it has a lot of, like, Google's entire revenue stream is based on the data that it has about you. So you're trading some minor convenience, some kind of neat tools for them. You're entering into this contract with them, although it is highly obscured, and most people don't realize how much information they're giving away about themselves, right? So, and then they turn that into physical money, right? They sell that and turn it into money. That should not be theirs to sell. I mean,
Right.
right? Like there's this big disparity between when you ask a person how important is making sure that your personal information is secure. Almost everybody's like, yeah, that's what I want for sure. But then you click on accept all cookies to get into to access a silly website and that is the contract that occurs. Okay, so for to allow you access to this, the contract is that now I'm going to collect this information about you, and you've given me permission to do so by clicking that, right? And
It's interesting because advertising actually, and the thing about advertising versus that style is advertising follows rules. It has to be very clear and present. And I even think about just in my LLM, like when I get a lot of people who vibe code a lot of stuff, they all get recommended the same stack from the same like five vendors. And I go, man, what a time to have been Vercel, Supabase, Resend, right? Like and what did they do to get this like this golden status? Whereas I kind of wish the LLM, when people talked about the idea of people paying to be a recommendation, I go, well, at least then I'd say, hey, these are three or four different stacks. They are ads. These people have paid to be
yeah,
like, so, at least tell me, at least show me, like, because they very much bias towards a certain stack. And not that those vendors are bad choices at all, but
no,
there are other choices out there to be made.
that's the
And
big problem with centralized control of your personal data. They control what you can control, what you see. What you end up with is an Orwellian version of the future where these centralized repositories could not start controlling what you see, and they sort of control what you think, because if they're controlling what you see and what you interact with, they have there's a positive correlation between that and what you actually think about, right? So there's subtle ways to influence that, but like what I'm talking about is this core infrastructure that is a core identity of a human that has a series of spokes associated with it. And I call this DU mod, and DU stands for digital U modules. So there's a
mhm,
core module, and then you have spoke modules off of it. One of those spoke modules, let's use the example of it's medical. It has and this is all based on the following two major premises, which are that the better our tools to analyze data get, the more important data becomes. And additionally, the better curated our data is, the lower the latency to making good decisions about that data, right?
right.
So this structure creates collects all the data about you, and but it's blockchain with an immutable contract. That's sort of like that sort of framework where like quantum level encryption that only you have the key to, right? And
Well, it's
decide who. Let me give you an example. Let's say this thing exists. I see this initially as being like data collectives, people who agree with this sort of coming together and taking back their information and working in some manner to erase it as much as possible from the current stores if they can, blah blah blah. But anyway, so let's say Procter and Gamble is working on, or I don't know, whatever. Eli Lilly. Okay, let's use Eli Lilly. That's a probably better example. They are wanting to do some research about a drug that they're messing with, and I decide that I want to um, open up an anonymous advertisement of my medical data that's that they can query that lets them know that I may the likelihood of me being a fit for this is higher than just random selection. So then they contact you, create a contract where you are the one who's getting paid for this information, not somebody who's collecting it and centralizing it without your explicit understanding that it's being done, right? So you're the one that benefits from it, not them. And it's also this is not equal. It's not fair, but life is not fair. And this is probably going to end up being how some version of this. Hopefully, it's not centralized. Hopefully, we can at least decentralize it. But this will eventually allow people to create sort of a universal basic income for themselves. They'll allow more, like somebody who has a lot of resources won't allow any of their data to be used, right? They don't need to, but they'll open more and more, they'll advertise more and more of their data set out so that they can be compensated for the use of it.
Well, it's interesting you met. So there's two sides. One is the medical side, and this a lot of people are afraid of sharing medical data, but this is one of the areas where I'm more like, no, we should share more of this because if we want cures, we need more data. And so like this, and if we want cures for these types of diseases, unfortunately, it can be anonymized data in the sense that your insurance company can't use it against you. But if we really want to let AI do its thing, the more data, the better. And so that's one side. And then the other side of it is what you're talking about, which is you sell it to the advertisers to make an income. The problem is it starts to turn into this circular economy where
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not
You're
making
selling
any
shit to the.
money and I'm just buying shit with money that's sort of like is money matter?
What are we
Um,
doing now? That's all we're doing now. We're going to Walmart and buying plastic shit with the money that we earn that we don't need. I mean, that's all it is now. It's a circular.
it's
It's
the
a zero sum
Timuification.
gain. You
And
know,
so here's the other thing that I worry, like there's one other side to this that I feel like isn't discussed. Every single credit card, every auto loan, every mortgage, every personal loan, almost every business loan is based on this fundamental idea that you will make as much or more in the future than you do today. And if all of a sudden we decide that 50% of people are unnecessary, some nonsense number, basically the whole banking system fails because nobody can pay back any loans
not
because that
really,
that
because the
that is
bottom 50% control less than 0.01% of the wealth. I mean, if you want to know the truth, right? I mean,
but
that's
this
just the
is
truth.
but they do have a lot of the debt probably. That's
Yeah, yeah.
this is fundamentally our entire economy, especially the debt based, everything that's ever been financed. The bank operated on the assumption that your W-2, because you got to give them your W-2, this is how much you're going to make in the future for the most part until you retire. Um, so if that suddenly becomes a lot less, how are people going to, what's going to happen to all of the things? At some point it's like we're going to have to repossess all the cars, all the homes get foreclosed upon. So I also look at it as, a few things that people don't see, and you're seeing it already. And so we're going to take this conversation. I've always said that NIMBY's going to happen. I said they're going to halt all data center construction and everybody will vote for this to be a thing because they just don't want this future that we're positing, and that progress can very well just simply be halted because the people don't want it. And And that may just be what we do because we look at this and
That's
say,
not gonna happen.
"You
It's
don't
not
think so?"
possible. No, it's not. As a matter of fact, if we do that, we will have overlords far more quickly because that's not going to stop. It might stop being public knowledge or in the public eye, but do you think that all governments of the world are going to adhere to that? They're not. It's not going to work
No.
that way. And whomever creates artificial general intelligence will rule the world if no one else has anything like it. Like we're talking, it's like Elon and Bezos. They're sort of playing 4D chess, and we're sort of scratching around in the dirt. We're not even playing chess. So
You don't think the people of other countries would revolt, though?
some, but all it takes is one actor. All it takes is one country to not do that and to develop artificial general intelligence, and they will dominate the entire world. It's just like if we went to war with orangutans.
Right, right.
I
I
mean,
mean, with free.
there's right. I mean, that's what sort of what we're looking at, right? I mean, we're looking at indigenous tribes shooting bow and arrows at airplanes.
But
That's
then
the
what do
kind of thing.
they but who do they sell everything to that they're like what to what end? That's what I think of.
Once they have the army to control the world, then you're looking at this as capitalism, right? What capitalism? I don't think the current version of capitalism is going. I think that we're going to move to a resource based economy eventually, and a more yes, if you consider capitalism as something that is going to continue on, for long into the future. Yes, if it's consumer based, blah blah blah, right? I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to move into more of a resource based economy, because as we develop these artificial general intelligence that can create novel concepts and they can think far faster than us, they'll create things that we can't imagine. Now, eventually, we will be able to manipulate matter in such a way that it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter the type of constrained energy you are manipulating. As long as you have matter, you can manipulate it into whatever you want it to be, right? And those are the kinds of like the things we can't even possibly imagine. All right, I mean that's probably a silly example, but unfortunately, there are no paradigms that exist that can make that fully understandable to us. I don't and you can compare this very, like, let's say, I have this really good solar panel, and I'm able to take it back along with all of my technology back to 1641.
Mhm.
And I could use all that and I could somehow I still have all the data that I have access to now, right? The whole World Wide Web. Who knows? I don't know. Whatever. But let's say you have access to that. What does that make you to those people? A-
Godlike.
And could they, if you try to explain to them what was going on, and you're just normal, they have no frame of reference to understand it.
But yeah, I mean, see, here's my thing is but at the same time, there will be a lot of people trying to kill you. And it will be very hard to stay alive in
Yeah, you're right.
in
You're right.
that world because there will be enough people that know that
Well,
this is not right.
you got to be smarter than that. No, I mean, you have access to information that they don't have access to. You need to find the people who are most influential and influence them in a manner that they protect you, right? I mean, and
Well,
if you're smart about it, you can, right?
the smartest thing to do would be to just invest in something you already know is going to take off and live quietly and happily in that time period.
I don't know if the Nasdaq was instantiated in 1742,
No, no,
but you're
I don't
right.
know
Though there
what
are things that you could invest in for sure.
you'd know where
Uh,
gold was struck or something. You'd be like, you know what? They
yeah,
sell shovels over in Colorado, and
yeah.
that's California. You'll do one of those type of things, or So this is like, what was that? there's a Stephen King show where he goes back to the '60s to try and to stop the JFK assassination,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
that's a good show, man.
yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah,
He starts making these bets to make all this money to survive because he
yeah.
knows all the sports bets, but he's not quiet enough about it. So then, of course, they try they try and get him. But it's funny how you think that these sort of ripple effects into the future. I do wonder, is capitalism not going to work? I tend to be a believer that this is a good system for humans when it
I think it
works
is
right.
right now.
I think it's
I don't
yeah.
think it's gonna forever be that way. I mean, like I say, we can't imagine the things that will exist in the future. We don't have a reference frame to do so. I mean, it's
If
just like somebody from 1645 had no reference frame to understand a computer and the World Wide Web, right? It's the exact same thing.
right.
Like that's not going to stop. As a matter of fact, it is speeding up and it will continue to speed up and it's speeding up exponentially, right? And
There's
that
this there's a wild book called The Postmortal that it talks about. It's a book about if people could live forever. Basically, they invent a cure for dying and then they invent a cure for sickness. And basically what happens is most people just go through a period of their life where they live as a homeless bum. And they're just a complete vagabond living out of cars and like they don't really do because life is effectively meaningless.
yeah.
Um
Yeah, then eventually they get all the way back to inventing a way to let yourself die. Like,
Yeah,
okay, this isn't as fun as I thought it was.
this is yeah, well, I think that's the thing. People talk about like storytelling. I go, storytelling is really cathartic for the storyteller. Like it's not something we want to offload to machines, or it's not something that's impressive. For example, if somebody makes up, I mean, I loved like the story 137 hours where he had to cut his arm off in the slot canyon. That story's not very good if it was made up. It's great because a human went through it and did it. And so I think about these feats of human achievement where of course a robot could go up a mountain that's never been done before. That's not impressive. There are animals that crawl up the side of walls, but it's cool when a human does something
Well,
that a
from
human
your
shouldn't be able
perspective,
to
it
do.
is right. Yeah, but I think that it's a matter of perspective and context. Uh, let's see. I'm not well enough equipped to discuss this. I don't think I haven't thought it through well enough to be able to give you a decent answer on this. But I just have and like I say, I'm no expert on anything. Like I go where the data leads me. You can change my mind about anything that I believe if you provide me with
Enough
concrete
data.
information to do so, right? It's going to require data. I'm not going to do it any other way. And you mentioned something about having faith in things. That's not the only way to do this. And that's why I brought up Bayesian prediction machines before, because if you think about this from a Bayesian perspective, it's not really faith. What it is a like probability of likelihood. So
Mhm.
I think that it's, I don't want like I don't 100% believe that the sun's going to come up tomorrow. I think it's extremely likely that it is, knowing what I know about physics, knowing what I know about the solar system. But there will be a time when that will not occur, right? I don't think it's going to be tomorrow, but I guess my point is I don't have 100. There's very little that I have 100% confidence in. But you don't need 100% confidence to make decisions and make predictions. We are constantly predicting future state. But we wouldn't be able to live if we weren't, right? I mean, we wouldn't be able to make it through a day. Oh, do I need my umbrella? I think it looks like it might rain. That's a prediction, right? I mean, that kind of stuff is occurring constantly.
Well, that's the age old question is like live like you're going to die tomorrow. If everybody did that, you wouldn't go to work. Like that, right. You have to, we do on some, in some sense, like if you knew you 100% got, hey, your death day is tomorrow, you're like, guess what? I'm going to go do something I love, skipping the
Peace
work for
out.
today. Yeah. Yeah. Say, hug my loved ones. Right. Like
Yeah.
you definitely don't behave, you behave with these predictive probabilities. The other thing I think about is scarcity though. So for example, I'm a rock climber. And I've watched climbing areas get absolutely destroyed by the introduction of rock climbing to too many people. And
Yeah.
it's not that I don't want more people to climb, but it is impossible to get on an absolutely stellar classic climb at some of these climbing areas. You live near one in Red River Gorge. It is impossible to get on. And so now I'm like, okay, let's imagine everybody has all the money and everybody's home all the time. I am not going to go skiing at Hunter Mountain. Everyone's going to go to Aspen, and Aspen is going to suck. And like, so at some point, when you have resources in general, some of the most beautiful things to do on this earth.
Prefer Vale, but okay, Aspen's good enough.
I like
Okay.
I like Vail myself too. Yeah, I'm a big Keystone fan because I like less people. If you haven't
Yeah.
noticed, so I like I like these little known areas. But these at some point, no matter what anybody says, universal high income, different economy, you are going to have to box out people from the scarce resource to avoid destroying the resource. And if these are the things you love to do,
That's possible. I mean, yeah, I mean that seems perfectly reasonable. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to me. Yeah, and the greater the population, the worse that sort of gets, right? So
and
that's
you
that.
right now, money controls that. Basically, most people can't ski in Aspen because it's unaffordable. And
Right.
the more beautiful the thing is, like either we put laws and we put restrictions on it, or we have to raise the cost of it to like keep people from using the
Oh,
thing.
that's
Um,
exactly what'll happen. Scarcity drives price, right? Like especially in our current economic framework. That's what I mean. That's sort of what how things work, right? And the universal high income doesn't mean that everybody gets a jet and everybody goes skiing in Vail because that gets driven by people who have a lot more than universal basic high income, right? I'd be like,
right,
listen,
right.
okay, I don't want all these people here, so I'm buying all this land, and you can stay here, but it costs you $650 a night, and it costs $400 a day for a pass. Right, I
Well,
mean, so that excludes people, right? Or whatever the cost exclusion point is.
right. Like this is why I always like I saw this interview with Elon Musk and Peter Diamandis, and it upset me so much because I was like, yeah, if your dream is to just buy shit at Walmart and all you think of us as like just consuming little plastic trinkets, sure, your version of high income will placate people to some
Yeah.
extent.
Well,
But
that's what they're talking about.
if you love other things like hiking the Appalachian Trail or going climbing or skiing or snowboarding, these things are not going to be remedied by universal your version of high income. Your thinking is we could just keep everybody happy by just providing an endless stream of shit for them to wear and consume and oh we'll make more drugs legal so you'll all be happy. And so I was like super kind of looking at this like, wow, what a short-sighted view of humanity. That's at least was my
Well,
impression of
I
it.
mean, you know, what they are talking about is over 50% of human beings act that way, right? So, I mean, I don't know that they're. I mean, obviously, there's a huge flaw in their thinking, but they have that's not coming from outer space. I mean, that's coming from hard data that
For
more
sure.
than 50% of people are happy buying plastic shit from Walmart and getting a bigger TV with their income tax return every year and chilling, right? I mean, so that's not,
It's not, no. And
but
you
it
know what,
is insulting. I agree
I
from
know a
that
lot of
perspective.
people. I mean, look, I know a lot of people in civil service, they retire and they just get fat on the couch. Like that like that is definitely a common thing where, everyone's like, hey, if everybody got paid, we'd all make art all the time. I go, no, no, no. There are people who retire and get
Yeah.
paid and they
We,
don't make art all the time. They
we
watch
may
football.
consume art or some version of entertainment. Most people are not creators. Most people are consumers, right?
That's that. Well, we are consumption, and even in the outdoor space, I'm not gonna lie. Everybody likes having new tools and stuff. I guess I cut from a different cloth. Even my old my climbing gear is extremely beat to shit. I wear that as a badge of honor. I go I'm always like, this has been through some shit. I've been, this is 25 years of rock climbing on these things. I don't want the new ones. I don't want people to see the shiny. There's almost like a
Yeah, there is.
it's like
That's
building
why
your
I
own
still
computer.
use. Yeah, that's why I still use Motorola Razor. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I got a lot of old little things on the wall over here. It'll be interesting to me. I'll tell you where I'm interested. It's because a lot of people maybe watching and thinking like there's a lot of doom and gloom in the thought process. I think the value though of truly human things starts to go up in a world where these other things come down. I talked to someone the other day. For example, I was like, there are definitely going to be spaces where hand coding is like has to happen because for whatever reason, I think the agency that is like there will be a thing where someone's like, we're the hand coding agency, right? Or with like calligraphy or there are art forms and things that go up in value
Yeah.
because they
Handcrafted
become
is that will for sure, like, that's something that will always, people there's value there beyond.
custom cars, vintage cars, right? I love it. Everyone's like, oh, they want the latest and greatest vintage. They love the Tesla Cybertruck. I don't like it. You want to know when I liked it? When nobody had it. When I had just
Yeah.
saw one on the road. But now, if I bought the Cybertruck, I see them everywhere. It's not cool anymore. My friend just got a 1987 Corvette, and I thought that's the coolest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's a
I
pretty
was like,
cool car.
and it was in great shape. So you're like sort of impressed that like this had been cared for over that period of time. So I think about I think we're going to be surprised. This is my prediction to sort of counter is I think we're going to be surprised how much of our humanity we discover and crave again the more and more we like integrate these machines into our lives. Um,
Until we're assimilated.
until we're yeah, perhaps, which is why I foresee like the R2D2 future. I'll give you another funny example. Is my service line backed up the other day, plumbing problems, right? Going back to these things, and I called the place and there was nobody available. It was late. I had to do all the it was disgusting. I had to do all the
Yeah.
shop vacuuming of this
Been there,
all
done
this
that, yeah.
duty, right? I had never wanted a robot more in my entire
Yeah.
life.
Where's my Roomba? Can it do this?
Yeah, like I needed like a little R2D2. Like, you just need to do this for me right now.
Come to
So
think of it, R2D2 is kind of shop vac-ish.
he would have been the perfect shape for this. Just like go out, wheel yourself across into the sewer and dump it all
Dump
out.
yourself out and come back.
I would have enjoyed a robot for that. So I think that there's going to be like a ton of benefits, for a lot of us. I don't know if this makes the people either unemployable or what, but I think there's super crazy applications for the banking system, implications for the banking system, and um, perhaps humans just end up becoming cheaper than robots too. We're just like, hey, it'll go a little slower, but it won't. And then there's the other side. So there's one other anecdote um, that could happen during the green. So there's a green revolution for farming is that specifically that I'm thinking of, and where we started this machine, this sort of the industrial revolution for farming. We import these machines over in other countries like India, and 20, 30, 40 years later, a lot of these machines are just sitting broken so there's this world of we sell these first gen robots to all of these small business owners, and basically they use them a little bit, they break, and then they're expensive to fix and nobody fixes them and just goes back to doing work.
That's entire. I think it depends on the time frame you're looking at, right? Yes, that's entirely possible in some sort of a short, truncated time frame. But if you push this way out, look at the next 10,000 years, like
Way, way out,
barring,
right.
but like. Another thing that I believe is going to happen that will help you a little bit with your rock climbing in the next 50 years to give you some more exclusive space is I think that humanity is going to spread out a little more, maybe start to become extra planetary. I think in the next 50 years, it's going to, like Bezos's vision with Blue Origin is to get all heavy industry off of the earth. And that's a big deal, man. I mean, that would be really cool. But, now we're polluting outer space. That's a big area. It's going to take a lot more
That's
of it to,
crazy.
and
Well, you
and
think
so,
about it, no
yeah,
gravity. So you assembling giant things in space makes a ton of sense because now you have the zero gravity. It would be beautiful. For as a lover of natural spaces, that is a future that I'm like very down
it,
with.
it
Heck,
it
I'd love to
opens
do
a lot
first
more
ascents to
space up,
Mars.
right? Like, think of all the space that gets opened up by the removal of all heavy industry from the earth. That's
That'd
a
be
lot
incredible.
of space,
That's an
you know?
incredible future. Yeah, to me, that's and
That's his vision.
it
It's
eliminates pollution.
admirable. Yeah,
And I think
it's very
about that with
admirable.
data centers too, which is the idea of moving those into space too. The water consumption, all because they're putting these in very beautiful areas. It's not. Now some people don't think the desert is very beautiful. I happen to like the desert, but that is what it is. And heck, maybe the next big climbing area is mountains on Mars and boulders on Mars. If we could find a way to not need the spacesuit, it could be the next
That's
big.
not likely in the next 50 years.
Because that place is full of first ascents. But it would be really cool, I think, to see some of the conservation efforts, the preservation efforts, because that's one of the biggest worries I have. It's one of the things that I've noticed with more and more people entering areas. You see it happen in real time. The human impact, even people trying to do the right thing outside. It's just the bodies being there ruins the area.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's hard to leave a space better than you entered it, right? Because we have an impact on it. Although when I camp or spend time in the woods, I try to adhere to that philosophy. But you know, we it is what it is. Another piece of that may sort of plays into your narrative here is um, as we become an extraplanetary species and we develop the infrastructure to get us into space quickly, have a quick launch cadence, the cost to get into space really starts to drop. All those things, and we have the infrastructure in place to map well the all of the asteroids that are close enough for us to access from the Earth in a reasonable amount of time. That could be some really cool climbing opportunities as well, even though you'd have to have a spacesuit. And you would not believe how much fun I had on the asteroid 1643b 49.
Let me tell you, that would be
First
very, very
climb.
cool. I mean, that is going to be like that. That will be a cool thing. Like Mount Olympus on Mars is apparently like way, way bigger than even Mount Everest here. So even though you'd have to have a spacesuit, just I think that it would be quite a feat without a. There will be all sorts of constraints. Like I did it without you.
When
You
you
got to
start to
do
get
it
up
with
to
oxygen.
Everest, you got to have oxygen anyway.
Yeah. Well, now people do it without oxygen, but
Yeah.
that's also a great barrier to entry. That also creates scarcity as abilities. So the other thing that I say is, if you want to get on great climbs, you have to climb really strong now, because you have to be able to put in effort that people aren't willing to put in. So it's so let me we've covered a wide range.
Sure. That's an understatement.
Understand. But I would say, I'm generally an optimist for the future. I think a lot of people would hear this idea, though, that the robots are, AGI is going to take over. Are you an optimist about this in general, that this is going
Absolutely.
to, so
I absolutely
we're
am.
going to end up in a better place as a species because of this?
We're going to end up in a better place. I, um, no, maybe not as a species. And I don't mean, yes, we will end up in a better place as a species. But what I think ultimately culminates from this is what I was telling you, a symbiotic relationship that turns us into something that's neither one or the other, but something that is a combination of the two. To what extent that occurs, there's, a whole, yes, I do believe that though. And that doesn't sound great to a lot of people though, right? So, um, and I understand why. I mean, first of all, it's scary. What
Yeah.
does that mean, right? I mean, that's just a scary, And secondly, we don't have good a frame of reference to think about what that would be like or what, I mean, there's just, that's definitely a scary thing. But I do absolutely believe, but this is a continuum. I'm not talking about small time frames here. I'm talking about millennia,
Right.
right?
You're going 10,000. I'm thinking like in the next 200 years.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think my feeling is it's a little more Star Wars and a little less Matrix. That's what I'm thinking. Like the bots are cute and they help us, and we still work with them. And people, maybe I mean, listen, some people. That's what I picture. A little
Yeah.
bit less.
Who knows? I mean, we could you know, I could argue with you know, we could like we could both choose one side and then we'll switch over and choose the other side. I mean, you know, I mean, like you can easily come up with arguments for potentially both of those scenarios occurring, right? I mean, and all this is conjecture, right? We don't. You know, there's no way to know. It doesn't, and the truth is the truth, no matter whether anyone or everyone believes it, right? I mean, and we don't know what that truth is. So it doesn't matter how many people believe that things are going to end up a certain way. That doesn't change what ends up happening necessarily. I mean, it can affect it potentially, you know, control
And you
the sort of the direction of the way people think.
so your early background, I was gonna say you've kind of been in AI and machine learning for a long time also. So you
Well, machine learning more so, not AI. I mean, you know, I wasn't one of the people who um, intrinsically understood that we would be able to get there with AI. I definitely in machine learning and you know standard algorithms. I'm a math guy, right? And yeah, so like from the time I was pretty young, yeah, my junior year in college, I had a research grant from NASA in cryptography, working on ways to determine priveness of very large numbers to try to break public key cryptography, RSA. You know,
okay.
so that sort of got me started in that, and there were a lot of things that occurred at that time. There, like the Great Mersenne Prime project kicked off right around then, and that got me in. That was like the first really hardcore, not decentralized resource sharing algorithm that existed. So what it's called the Great Mersenne Prime Project, and it's still going on. And the largest known prime number in the world was discovered by that, and it's extremely likely the next one will be as well. But anyway, I'm thinking that was 1995 is when that started, and I was heavily involved with it. I really wanted to discover one of those damn Mersenne Prime numbers. But Mersenne Prime is just 2 to the n minus 1. So like that's the form that it takes, right? And so there seems to be an unusually large distribution of primes that fit that into that
Hmm.
space.
It's so interesting because I was never I don't want to say I'm a lover of math. It sort of like was a necessary for me. It was a necessary. I became more interested in it after becoming an engineer, but in school, math for math's sake was never as interesting to me. And then once I
Yeah.
started doing software, I was like, oh,
Right.
I'm
Now, yeah,
interested in
like, oh,
this.
wait a minute. This has application.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't like that kind of theoretical stuff, but it brings me back also to that idea that the science almost enforcing the faith is sometimes, I think, the fact that everything does work so perfectly seems almost intelligently designed, so to speak.
Well, that's because like so do you think that true reality is what we are seeing? Like, do you think that's true? Our brain is creating a prediction machine that is creating a version of reality that exists before we see anything. And then what surprise is the difference between what your brain is predicting and what it actually senses. And you don't aren't surprised very often.
right. Right.
So
There's not I guess there isn't a true standard of reality in that sense, in the sense that we are all perceiving our own reality. And I think that, yeah,
but we all
that,
do so from a common structure, right? So we all
yeah,
have fairly set, but consider this. What if you were able to see the entire electromagnetic spectrum and you had those sensor inputs wired into your neocortex? Do you think your perception of reality would be different than it currently is?
definitely, definitely.
Exactly, exactly. It would be. And that I guess what I'm saying is that's only a single additional sensory input, right?
Right. Well, this is where we get into this idea, that's right, that we get like even just time being a dimension that is bendable, flexible, and that there could be a being outside of time that lives completely outside of this concept. And so I have often I
It's
mean,
not really
yeah,
time. So it's more. So it's space time that is
space time.
bendable and flexible. But there's a big difference between time. Just calling something time and space time because like for us, we have three spatial dimensions and one temporal dimension. Right, that's
Hmm.
how we can think about
That's the
that.
four.
But
Yeah.
we cannot think about four spatial dimensions. You can think about it, but if you don't aren't if you're not familiar with math, you can't visualize. Well, even if you are familiar with math, you probably can't visualize a tesseract properly. And then that's only one extra dimension, right? The only way that we understand how to manipulate things in higher dimensions is through mathematics. I mean, we absolutely cannot develop any true intuitive
And
sense of the space.
this is where for me it's so interesting how the more you learn about math for me brings me more and more closer to the idea that it brings me closer to faith instead of further away. Like it brings me further away from the idea that we're just a biochemical machine floating accidentally through space. And
Explain that more to me, but I want to understand that better because I have a very hard time reconciling it, and I want to. I want to understand your perspective.
yeah, my perspective is once you get to this place where math can where if you have this belief that math and science actually can, like everything can be explained, if these things can all behave in such a predictable way, then it brings me closer to the idea that this is sort of the language of God, right?
I got you. I got you. Okay.
That's what I think. This is what he used to create the world in which we're living, and even the physics. There's a great Richard Feynman kind of talk
We're
about how we're
absolutely
just this
wrong about
wave.
this stuff, all right? We're like ours. We're completely wrong. Well, I mean, it becomes more obvious the further back we can look at the things we can do. I mean, just look if you just look at the way the James Webb Telescope has pushed back to finding highly organized spiral galaxies within 300,000 years or 300 million years of when the Big Bang supposedly went off. That's not possible with our current theories, right? So I guess my point is um, we don't. We are only explaining things from our perspective. That's not really an understanding of the way things truly work. It's only an understanding of the way things work from our perspective. If you had additional sensory inputs in your neocortex, it would not appear exactly the same as it currently does to you, and it would require, and it may or may. I don't think our current like there are portions of mathematics that I don't like. This is why I wanted to get in. Like I initially wanted to be a, 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 a research mathematician. I ended up getting a woman pregnant, and I chose going to work as opposed to continuing to grad school, right? But so I ended up as an engineer, damn it. But anyway, but like there is a lot that we don't know about mathematics, and
Oh, I and we
there are
keep discovering
fundamental
more.
things about it, right? There are assumptions that we're having to make. Same with science, right? I, I
That's
don't
that's
I don't know if
that's
we can. That's
what
a
was it.
like
I think it was like Werner Heisenberg that said something like that. If there's like a glass, he's like the top of the glass is science, and at the bottom is God, kind of thing. Like
oh, that was that Warner von Braun, maybe. I don't know.
I forget the quote, but
The
it was this
German
idea
the
that
German scientist, rocket scientist.
the
They have this.
further you dive into this, the more amazing it is that like we are even here on this space in the middle of this vast sea of nothingness. And like and I said and the more and more you learn, you almost are like, oh my God, like it's kind of incredible that everything works out
It
exactly
is
like
incredible.
this.
I agree with that. It appears incredible. I absolutely agree with you. There is awe and wonder in me when I look at the vastness of the things that are outside of where we're standing. Right? I mean, it's unfathomable. You know, the if we are truly constrained by the speed of light, like let me ask you this: like, so let's say there are 1 trillion galaxies and each one of those trillion galaxies has a trillion stars, right? And each one of those stars has a 40% likelihood of having planets surrounding it, and each one of those solar systems has a 10% chance of having a planet that's in the Goldilocks zone, similar to Earth.
Mhm.
What do you think the likelihood of there being a life on in the other life in the universe that may or may have evolved similarly or dissimilarly to ours? Either one. I think that there's so many possibilities that both have probably occurred. But
Yeah,
if we're
this
constrained by the speed of light, we'll never see it.
well, this is that. So there was a great astrophysicist that was on. I forget what one of these podcasts, but they said that even if there was life, it couldn't even reach us. That
No,
it's no matter like the idea that we have these UFOs and people think that we have people. They are pretty convinced that first of all, if we actually did really discover an alien, there's no way it could have been kept under wraps by the people that had discovered for that. There's just absolutely no way. But secondly, even in our wildest dreams, a biological form or even a machine form making it light like hundreds of thousands of light years across the galaxy is beyond us. What is the likelihood? I mean, mathematically, I would say that um, well,
it's a
so mathematically, there's some kind of if everything evolved from derived
it's
from
a near
truly nothing,
certainty if it's a mathematic. If you're just looking at it mathematically,
but
the possibility is a near certainty, as closest to certainty as you can get.
from a faith perspective, there's nothing else out there
Really?
because
But why does your faith require you to believe there's nothing else out
well,
there?
actually, it doesn't actually require me to believe that. It's because I can actually see very, very like there could be other creations. What I think is what amazes me is the idea of the single cell, like the idea of nothing, inert gases producing a single celled organism, and that producing humanity from a met I that I cannot even wrap my mind around. I think there's these giant jumps that you have to make. Now, are there other beings? Were there other beings created in other places? That to me is also potentially in the design that we'll never discover each other.
So you do not think that there has been a continuous progression from single celled organisms up through what we current the Homo sapiens that was shaped completely by the highly inefficient optimization algorithm of evolution.
I don't. I think that
Okay,
there's
okay,
something else. I think that
okay.
something else happened. Obviously for me, it's creation. It's God. It's a creator. Now, how he did that, that is not explained in any books. It's sort of like, hey, he created these things. It's sort of like a line, right? God created man. Like that is it.
Yeah,
But
you got
genetically,
Genesis, and then you got to
right?
go from there.
You got Genesis like creation is one page, right? Like it really
Right.
doesn't say whether there were any. That's why I say it doesn't, like if they discovered other life, that doesn't really negate the idea of creation because
Okay, that's good. I
it
hope it does. Yeah, I don't want it to. I'm glad it doesn't.
no, it for me that doesn't because it just means that in the design we were probably meant to not discover each other, or at some point maybe we were, who knows. But it was definitely it definitely these get to be these complicated questions. But like for example, National Geographic did like a genetic study for the what they would say is the scientific Adam, right? And or the scientific Adam and Eve, and they were able to track like all people's genetics back to like a common. And at some point, there had to have been, whether you believe evolution or in creation, there had to have been a first or a
Yeah,
first two,
sure.
right? Yeah, there had to be. But they arrive at this. Now there was all these experiments in the '60s of trying to basically take these inert gases of what they believed was the early atmosphere and create a single celled organism. And they tried to do things like introduce electricity, and they produced some amino acids and maybe some nucleotide, but none of it was able to actually explain the, even if that is the origin, right? The first cell, what created the first cell, and going from that to complex organisms is I mean, I have to gloss over just sheer. I
You
mean it
realize there's a immense scale of the time interval here we're talking about, right? We're talking about billions of years. I mean, that is a long time, dude. I
it is a
mean,
very long time.
all right.
I agree. I
But
just
if
still
now,
think
there's a difference between, like, some people don't believe the Earth is truly 4 billion years old, right? I
no,
mean,
no, I believe in the age of the earth. I think that there are
okay,
things about like I'm not one of these, like some people, like they don't believe in dinosaurs. They go, no, there were dinosaurs, there were ancient creatures. I just don't think those are explained in Genesis for us. That's just, but for me, it's just simply not explained there. But it is definitely, to go even to go from a single cell to a dinosaur, forget the human, right? Like, even to just get it, I go, that is
That would probably take a couple billion years.
and is there, like and then I go, is there any and also for it to be so random, we've talked about this idea of, like,
Very.
just random mutation resulted in a more complex being. In
Well, it's
in a
not
sense,
completely random. There's a it's not very efficient, but there is an optimization algorithm going on, right? So the optimization algorithm is the propagation of DNA, the cell's DNA, right? So initially, single cell organisms would follow a gradient towards I don't know, let's just say sodium. That's what they need, and so they follow a gradient towards sodium. Then a mutation certainly exists that allows it to more effectively follow that gradient, and it now has the ability to more easily change directions. Well, it's going to be more likely that that thing lives, right? But
mm,
unfortunately, there are it doesn't matter how good you were made if you accidentally fall off a cliff and die, right? So, like, and you don't get a chance to like,
correct, correct.
so evolution is a very inefficient way of doing it, but several billion years. I mean, actually, it's it's been 4 billion years before humans existed. So over the course of 4 billion years, it is possible to take something highly inefficient, optimized for propagation of DNA, and it turned into. I'm like, I think that it is. And you get back to faith, right? Like you have to have faith in something. It's not that I have faith that that's the truth. It is given the information that I have, it seems the most likely thing to me. That's all. That's all. So I in absolutely no way am trying to infer that what I'm saying is correct. I hope you
But
understand that, right?
no, 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 I told and in some
Okay.
sense, I say, even still, that process of that even working doesn't doesn't negate the idea that it wasn't kicked in motion by something.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
That's
uh,
that's entirely possible. I'm not saying that didn't occur. What I was saying is, I believe the likelihood of that being the case is less than the other likelihood. I'm not, there may only be 10-12% of confidence interval between those two things, right? I mean,
Yeah, well,
I don't know
that's
for
it.
sure.
That Some people take the like the story, their creation story, the story, they take that very literal, in that it had to have
That
been
makes it a
seven
little rough
days. That's where I say, you have a being that lives outside of time, right? Outside of time and outside of space. You don't know how long these things took. It does not, all the things we discover simply just reinforce the idea that this is an absolutely amazing scenario we are in.
Yeah,
And so,
what? So that makes me think of, like, you hear these people. I've never done this, and I don't think that I ever will. But you hear about these people who do take this drug called DMT, and they live
uh,
an entire lifetime in 20 minutes or something, right? Like, it's not like there's this crazy time thing that occurs when you take. Evidently, I don't know, when you take
well,
that, it messes with your temporal awareness. I guess I don't know.
so that is one of the, without saying anything, one thing that's amazing about psychedelics, one of this starts to, and I think there's a reason a lot of people who take psychedelics do end up with a faith, end up having a faith, because it's insane. Time doesn't exist, and there's no other way to explain this other than, people who've done it know what I'm talking about, where time
So
just
I'm not saying
disappears,
that I
and you're like,
haven't done
what?
psychedelics. I'm saying that I've never done DMT. As
Yeah,
a matter of
yeah.
fact, I'm quite fond of psilocybin myself. So I'm very familiar with what you're talking about, and um, I explain that very differently than what you're doing there. And I don't know this, but this seems likely to me. Okay. All right. First of all, think about this. Think about somebody running down. How long have we been going on here? This is going to go on way longer than a podcast should.
It's gone Joe Rogan on us.
Yeah. The 3 hour podcast that you won't want to listen to. No, but, so anyway, so I believe what's going on. I don't know about all other things because I can't speak to the other things. I can only speak to psilocybin specifically. And remember how I was talking about our brains sort of being these Bayesian prediction machines? They make predictions about what we're going to see, and then if what we actually if one of our sensory inputs shows us something outside of that prediction, it creates this surprise.
Right,
It
right,
can scare you, right? Okay, so I believe what a lot of that is, and the temporal awareness pieces, time dilation, whatever, like the absence of time, and this feeling of sort of a universal cosmic consciousness, and that things are all just connect. Those things that you feel, right? I think that they are a relaxing of your brain's prediction algorithms. So, um, here's a really good example of that. So, you know how like somebody is videotaping and they take off running in the road. Well, that is hard to look at because it's bouncing all over the place, right? Well, your
right,
eyes are very similar to a camera. Why, when you run, are you not seeing bouncing all over the place?
right, right.
The reason you're not is because your brain is removing your interaction out of the equation, so that and there is, I believe, an evolutionary reason for that, because you can't run from something if you're bouncing all over the place and can't see, right.
Right, right.
But anyway, my point there is, um your brain extracts all that away so that you don't see that, because it's helpful to you. But psilocybin, I think, relaxes some of those prediction mechanisms, and like that's like hence the term, like, have you ever really looked at your hand, man? Like,
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah, yeah.
mean?
Or
Like
like, don't
you
look at
see
your
something.
face. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Don't look at
yeah,
your.
you
Yeah, yeah.
see
Like
something without all the prediction mechanisms occurring, and it doesn't look like that thing because now your brain has relaxed all that stuff, and you're as close to reality as you can possibly get.
the thing that I've always described as a little bit differently than that is just as you're intaking more information than your brain can process. Sort of like you're taking in like a fiber optic line level information and like passing it through a 56K modem. Like
Yeah.
and suddenly
You think
things
it
appear.
overloads. It overloads
Yeah,
things.
you're sort of seeing like these additional spectrums. Um
I
and
think it does
so
the
I
opposite of overload. But who
it's
knows, man? That's
Who
interesting.
we'll never right, and that's coming. It's interesting. That's more of an LSD. All of them do different things. I think that's more of an LSD thing than psilocybin. I remember being very visual. It's a more visual. It was a different feeling, but these were all kind of these experiences that I think they're. It's just incredible what that I do remember that temporal that loss of time.
Yeah, that temporal awareness loss. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a weird thing to describe to somebody, and you're like you understand time as a dimension because suddenly it's removed, and you're like,
Or that
and
it
then
doesn't exist at all,
it
almost.
it
Sometimes you
doesn't.
can get yourself there.
Yeah, yeah. There's no right. You're just gonna be there forever. Yeah, it's a very very interesting thing, and man, it's levels of human consciousness. These all like you said, that everything is connected. These all kind of come back to this idea of can there really be AGI, or there's some. I just feel there's something other, and that's kind of what I would say is that to people who are kind of in the. I have a distinct feeling that there's something else out there.
Agree with you. I do agree with you there. I agree with you that but I don't say it as something other. I think that there is something more that we do not
Mm,
understand yet, right? But I mean, because there's a lot of evidence that that's the case. Like if you look back through human history, we we try to take what we know right now as being everything there is to know, and try to shove it in this. I mean, that's what we've always done, right? So
hmm
I think that'll just continue on, right? I agree with you. There is something more, but I don't know that that something more is something more than the historically significant something more, or truly something more. I
No,
don't know.
this is and this is I think these are like things that they're just struggles and they're things that you have because there's the like you said, there's the idea of is it all science? Is there is the idea of spirituality a delusion, or is that the something more? And I think that's where you sort of have to have the faith piece
Yeah,
that
I don't
that
know that the human brain is capable of fully understanding our universe. I don't think that it is. Everything has constraints, right? I think that I don't know that the brain will ever be capable of fully comprehending the universe. I don't think it's possible.
no,
You know,
I don't think so. I think that that is, and it's probably by design. It's probably
okay.
that's probably that's it.
I can't argue against that. I definitely
Yeah,
can't argue against that. I have no evidence to argue that against that.
that's
I can't
it's
argue for it either, though.
the thing I tell people too is, especially with all this stuff going, because you live through tumultuous times. It always feels like the end of the world is coming. Sometimes for a lot of people, and I like to think that every generation felt like that. Like right now we're going through this thing. There's AI. There's a lot of tech layoffs. I lived through a recession. I was like, listen, but there was people who like got drafted to World War II. That must have felt like, and they're like, and you're going to be on this boat and you're going to land on this beach and you're like at the front row. And I said, and that must have felt like the end of the world too. And
Yeah,
so
it definitely did.
I
Like
like
Saving
to be
Private Ryan,
fortunate.
man. That is some powerful shit, man. I mean, that had to have felt like the end of the world. You're coming up on machine guns firing at you, and a gate comes down, and you got to run into it. I mean, holy moly! Yeah. So I think, yeah, I call that the sandwich board thing phenomenon. So every generation thinks the generations after them are going to hell, and there's always a few guys with food in their beard walking around with a sandwich board saying the world's getting ready to end. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And I distinctly try and remind myself that if you had to pick a time to live, this is probably a pretty darn good one. I'm just saying.
Um, yeah. I mean, if you
Yeah.
really truly think about how hard it was to stay alive,
It might
before.
before all of this, and even like you go through, we're kind of the first generation that didn't like get drafted to a war, really. I mean, the millennial generation, I mean, yes, we had Iraq, we had Afghanistan, but I said, like, just thinking about just, you know, Korea, Vietnam. I mean, people, there was a lot of like, hey, here's a rifle, you're going. So there
Yeah.
was a lot of that. And then on top of that, there was a lot of, the medical breakthroughs we have are still better. Yes, we do have these weird toxins in the environment that we got to figure out, but medicine is definitely better than it was. And I just try and remind myself, like you said, the sandwich board is, try to remember that.
Generational.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody thinks it's kind of the worst ever. And I kind of look back at when I graduated college and I thought, oh, this is the worst ever. And I see people graduating now and they're going, oh, this is the worst ever. It's very hard to get started. It's hard to get
It
started, but it
is.
does get better. It
It
gets
is. There's
better.
this catch-22 situation there too, right? And people are predicting that there will be less entry-level jobs and people graduating from college that aren't able to find a job because these horrendous AI, HR, resume tools that like exclude, more people than probably should be excluded. You know, I I understand part of where they're coming from there. Like it would that's a tough thing to consider. I mean, but it's just another it's just another step, man. I mean,
Well,
do I think
it
it's not the
raises
end.
it raises the value of getting back out in the world. The thing that I tell people is now, walking in the front door is pretty incredible. Like if you saw somebody just walk in the front door and say, "Hey, I wanted to give you a paper resume." Now suddenly you stand out, and that used to
You
be the
do stand
way.
up for sure.
That was the way back in the day. So I think about what is old. I always say, like, look at some old stuff. What is old becomes new. Yes, the online application process is terrible. It was terrible 20 years ago. But it's I'm like, but you show up at a meetup, you meet somebody. That's kind of the now suddenly email me on Monday. Maybe you have a
Yeah,
podcast. Maybe
yeah.
you're at the top of the list. That I remember having a very hard time. That was what I was saying. Getting out of college, finding my way, finding a job. I didn't go to college for software. I did a whole bunch of things before that and a lot of other odd jobs. And when people come out, I remember thinking, oh, like it was so much easier for my parents. And, they would tell me, no, it was still hard. My dad was like, I had a landscaping company and a siding company. My dad ended up becoming a cop. He's like, I did 20, he did tree cutting. And he's like, I almost dropped the tree on somebody's house. And like, it was, they have all these, he's like, I tried a million different things before I found the thing I wanted to do. And I try to remind people that now, like with hindsight, I'm like, yes, it feels like AI is this brand new thing, but the struggle of carving your path in the world is not new. And so AI is just another dimension to that, but it's not the cause of all of this, despite what you may be seeing in the media. This is a very normal thing for coming out of the of into the job market.
Yeah, yeah. I guess there was a time that people would get a job, and like a significant majority of people would work the same job their entire lives, and it was going to be available to them. Like that when that went away, like I'm part of the generation where that sort of ability went away, and we you couldn't reliably depend on getting a single job and working in that job your entire career.
It's
That
hard.
felt Yeah, that was hard, but that's just continue to get worse and worse and worse. Right? I mean, they're different and more and more different. I guess I should say. I don't know if worse is the right word.
Yeah, yeah, that's for I agree. It's not worse. It's just a different economy, and we don't work 20 years and get a pension and that kind of thing. And now I could see why that would be appealing, but too late now. No, so uh,
Now I've got to work right up to the time I die.
but you know what? We had a wide ranging convo. I like to end the podcast with two big questions, and the first one is: do you have any recommendations for people just starting their career in software or just starting their career in general?
Well, I think I don't want to say things. My biggest thing, and I do a lot of hiring of technical people, right? And I have for quite some time, and what I personally look for, um, I could I don't care whether you have industry experience or not. What I'm far more interested in is an intellectual curiosity.
Mm,
Like the more insatiable that is, the more likely I am to be interested in that person. Because as an engineer, as a software developer, not just as those things, there's plenty of other different careers, but um, you have to be a lifelong learner. Right,
you
and if
definitely
you don't
do.
have intellectual curiosity, and you're not willing to invest your own time to learn new and interesting things that are interesting to you, then I'm not saying you're not going to be effective at your job, but you won't be as effective at your job. That's been my experience, right? As
You
far as
won't
with
keep
people,
moving up. I've seen that, and I
yeah,
found that in my career. Like even now, like let's say AI comes along, you have to learn all the AI, but then it's never been easier to learn more things. So now I'm like going down the stack and up the stack. Whereas before I was more of a UI specialist, and
yeah.
now it's like, that's not important, but that's okay because It's just going to change.
AI has made our ability to learn and assimilate new things a lot easier as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you got to be really careful because if you're looking at things that you don't have a subject matter expertise in, it's very easy to believe things that it tells you that are maybe not exactly true, right? And
You have to have a
and
critical mind. You definitely
right,
have to
but
have a critical mind.
if you're interacting with AI in something that you're a subject matter expert in, you see that it makes mistakes. But if you're not a subject matter expert in that thing, it seems completely reasonable like it seems like it's making pretty good decisions and telling you pretty decent things. But the problem is there um that's pretty much the way it is in general. Like you got to be careful. You're right. You got to be critical. You got to be a critical thinker. So that's the
Well,
first thing is
I love
natural
that.
curiosity.
And you have to learn the fundamentals because you won't know if it's getting lied to or not, and that all comes with curiosity.
And
And
that's
then
scary and dangerous for people who are just starting out in their career too, right? Because they haven't had an opportunity to develop any sort of expert. Like I discourage kids from overuse of artificial intelligence because I think that they should learn fundamental things before that, right?
me too,
Like
me too.
yeah, I've got a good friend who he has a 12-year-old son who does a lot of some beta, not a lot, some beta testing for me, and he is the best beta tester I've ever had. He's 12 years
Yeah,
old.
amazing.
And he does not he's doesn't use artificial intelligence because his father says that you have to learn the fundamentals before you're allowed. I mean, he does, but not for that stuff, right? And
I
that's why
agree.
he's so good at what he's doing.
Well, that's exactly I think school becomes more important in the world of AI because you need time to do things the slow way without the pressure of needing to be productive. And so that I think is something where folks are like, "Oh, how" I said, "Well, in software before you sort of did this on the job training kind of thing, but now maybe there'll be a little less of that because the AI tools are expected, but that means you should take some more time." It I think it raises the value of almost a computer science degree, or it should change it, but it raises the value of having 4 years of handwriting code
I
and
agree
learning
with you. I
architecture,
agree with
and
that.
it'll
I
help a
think you're
lot.
right. I agree with that. I
And then
I
my
concur.
my my last question is the, any good books that you recommend to people?
Oh, absolutely. Um, probably, there's 2. One, is called Everything is Predictable. You'll have to look it
Everything
up,
is
I can't
predictable.
remember the author's name.
I'll look it up.
And then the second one is called The Thousand Brains Project, or The Thousand Brain Theory. It's one of those 2, I can't remember. But this guy's name is Jeff Hawkins, and he was the one I was telling you about that started Palm Pilot and started Numenta. But those 2 books are, probably, they helped me gain a more intuitive understanding of the direction that I wanted to go, in my current field, I guess.
Amazing. Amazing. So I'll add those to the show notes for people watching so that they can pick those up. I definitely am interested in those. Yeah, especially the thousand brain theory. The human mind is an incredible interest to me. Especially now.
I think one of the things you'll find interesting is they've spent 20 years trying to map it out, and they still haven't got it figured out. I think that lends sort of some credence to some of the things you were saying, right? I mean, I think that, maybe, maybe there's more to it than that, and there may be, who knows? Additionally, I will, send you, the URLs for the 2 repos we discussed.
Amazing. That'll be great. I'll share those as well. Roger, it was great having you on the show.
Too bad. Hopefully I didn't go off on too many tangents on you.
No, I'm happy for the tangents. So
I
thanks,
enjoyed our
Roger.
conversation a lot.
Me too. Me too.
All right,
These are
brother.
I have fun with these. Have
Yeah,
a good one, Rod.
you too, man.